Welcome to the Envision podcast. My name is Rhea and I'm part of the marketing team here at Envision. In this show, we will cover stories of independence stemming from the blind and low vision community and see how AI and tech can create better access to the visual world. This is the first episode and I'm very excited to introduce our very first guest who is here with me in person, Ihab Laachir. Ihab is a political science student at the University of Amsterdam, which is where we met actually when I was doing my master's program. Ihab was asking me for assistance, and then I thought about him again when I joined Envision, and I came across Ihab's advocacy online. So I first contacted Ihab to join our inclusive innovation events, which we host every year, but he couldn't make it. But luckily, we are now reuniting again for the very first episode of this podcast. Welcome, Ihab.
Thank you.
Can you tell me a bit more about yourself and your background?
Sure. So I'm Ihab. I'm 26 years old. I'm studying economics and business and political science, as Rhea just mentioned. And I'm also a member of the Central Student Council of the University of Amsterdam. And our Central Student Council is advocating for the rights of students. For example, with the CVB, which is the executive board, we're in contact with them and with other UvA stakeholders to try to make the lives of students as pleasant as possible. And within the Student Council, I'm an advocate for accessibility and inclusion within the university.
That's great to hear. Like, you're really putting in the work and actually creating an accessible future, which is amazing. So at UvA, what are other things that you find that can be like simplified, for example?
Well, like the revolving doors, I've spoken, of course, to UvA stakeholders, and another reason they give is temperature control, so climate reasoning. However, the problem with it is that, I get hit by them all the time, and my stick also gets stuck in between the doors quite often too. Like, if you don't pay attention, it's very easy for your stick to just get stuck, and then like someone from security has to come to bail you out, and then they have to reverse the rotation of the doors to free your stick so you can continue on your merry way. But other than that, there's no guiding lines. Well, they're starting to make guiding lines now in one building at Reuters, but there's like tons of buildings at Reuters, and there's also a bunch of other campuses of the University of Amsterdam, so it's like a drop in the ocean. However, at least there's a start. Elevators that don't speak which floor they're stopping at are also a pain, because then you have no clue where you're getting off. Even if you press, for example, the button for floor 4, it doesn't mean that you will actually stop at the 4th floor, because there can be people who want to get off at the 2nd or 3rd floor or the 5th floor. So you never really know which exact floor you're stopping at. And for me, the main problem with the university is actually attitude. And attitude can be, well, some people might think it's the easiest thing to change, right? The only thing you really need is for people to behave. However, it seems that it's the most difficult thing to change within the university, and I think probably within other communities as well. I'm going to assume that a lot of people with a visual disability will agree with me on this, that attitude is, well, one of the most important things, also somehow one of the most difficult things to change. For example, there are still people who say, oh yeah, if you have a disability, maybe you shouldn't be doing my program, maybe you should go somewhere else, even if the challenges has nothing to do with your visual disability. It's just simply that they don't want to deal with it. And that kind of attitude and that kind of behavior is still very much accepted within society in general, when it really shouldn't be, because it's questioning your fundamental right to education, which nobody should be able to do. It's called a fundamental right for a reason, right?
What's it like going head to head
with decision makers?
Yes, and if you can give some examples, whether it's a teacher and people in position of power in the university.
Well, the problem is that it's everywhere. So it can be a student counselor, it can be a student dean, but it can also be the dean of a faculty or like a program director. So in the student council, I'm actually a member of a committee that directly advises the rector of the university as a student representative. And well, that committee is basically filled with educational directors and other people who have decision-making authority. And there was one person in that meeting who literally said, yeah, if people have trouble coming to campus or can't come to campus because of a disability, they're not welcome at my program. They shouldn't be doing my program. And the program in question was PPLE, which is psychology, politics, law, and economics. And that has nothing to do with practical application. It's literally a theoretical program. So in theory, you should be able to do the entire thing online. Of course, it's not ideal, and I'm not saying that it's a good idea, but there's really no practical grounds for him to say this, no safety concerns, nothing. Even though that's the case, he was still basically excluding people, and nobody said anything about it. And the director was in that meeting, in that room, and said nothing. I'm the only person who called him out on it and basically said, hey, you're not allowed to take away people's fundamental right to education. That's against the Constitution. Please speak in a little bit more of a respectful way. And well, that's the main, of course, that's in the main decision-making body in the highest rung, shall we say. And if it happens there, well, you can bet your ass that it's going to happen in other places as well. And I've also heard study advisors, student deans suggest that maybe you shouldn't be here, or maybe you should go somewhere else. Or, well, as I said, if it happens in the highest echelons, it will happen everywhere else. If the decision-making powers don't set a good example, then other people won't follow the example because there's no example to follow. And yeah.
What has been the reaction? So when you fight back, what is the reaction, and have you been met with positive or negative responses? If you can give an example on both ends.
Well, the problem is more that people are not going to question you and outright disagree with you. So nobody's going to say, actually, people with disability aren't welcome here. Fuck off. They're going to be way more indirect than that. So what happened in this case is people just stayed quiet and just didn't do anything about it. So the response that you get is often either a non-response, so no response at all, or you get vagaries, like dancing around the issue, basically not addressing the problem. And I think that's the fundamental issue. Like nobody's going to question human rights in public. Nobody's going to say, hey, questioning your right to education is okay. Is okay. You shouldn't be here. This space is not for you. But what they're going to do is just stay quiet or look away, pretend it's not happening, and just fundamentally not do anything about the issue. And that's more difficult than if people would outright be discriminatory, because if people are outright being discriminatory, then you can very easily go to the courts or very easily start official complaints, start official procedures. But if people have it in their, they basically dance around it and don't directly discriminate, but just let it happen, then it's much more difficult to do anything about it. And that's often how it goes.
Your bravery and confidence, so for example, your time at school before university, or is this something you always had, or did it come with time?
Well, thanks a lot for the compliments, first of all. That's very nice of you. I've never really had trouble fighting for my own rights. So if I encountered bullshit or people trying to dance around the issue, I never had trouble calling them out on it. Because at the end, if you don't claim your own space, you will be set aside. So you really need to, basically, that's a skill you really need to develop. If you want to get somewhere, at least you need to stand up for yourself. So in that sense, I've never really, if people try to put limits on me that I didn't agree with or that I disagreed, that I didn't really feel apply to me, then I would question it and I would gainsay it and fight against it. But I only started really doing advocacy work for I think 2 years now. And it's not really courage. It's just that it's more of responsibility. If you say in your elections, right, that you're gonna represent people with disability, that you're gonna fight for accessibility and inclusion if that's what you are basically basing your elections on, then it's only natural and it's only expected that when someone is questioning the rights of the students you were claiming to represent, that you're gonna call people out on it because it's your job, right? It's something it's a responsibility you chose to pick up. And if you choose to pick up that responsibility, you should take it seriously. Like if you think you cannot do it, then it's probably best to just not run, because it is, in the end, like as much as I would want the world to be inclusive, to be accessible, and for people to always think about other people's feelings and what certain ways of thinking or behavior would do, I just know from practical experience that that's not the way the world works. So if you want to do like advocacy work or student council work or really anything to do with politics, with fighting for people's rights, then you need to be willing and able to stand up when people call people out when they try to exclude others. That's, I think, it's a fundamental prerequisite to doing this kind of work, because otherwise you'll be frustrated with yourself and you will quit halfway through, because you will just feel really bad about it. And it's, for me, it wasn't really like, I just got annoyed. Like, when people do things like that, I just get angry instead of sad. And I think that really helps as well with the energy issue. It's just you need to find a way to get energy out of things going wrong instead of it taking energy away, because otherwise you won't continue to be able to do it. You will just get like a burnout at some point, and that's that.
Kudos to you. And I really respect you, and like, because it's not like you're just resilient, you're also like fighting back. So it's not like you're assuming a position of, okay, these are the boundaries that I have to live within and I'm gonna keep it this way. No, like you're trying to break these boundaries of accessibility. And so as part of your role in the university, can you tell me projects you're currently working on or things you want to achieve, but also throughout your role as part of the student council?
Yes. So what I've contributed to, guiding lines on the floor to start with, because they weren't there when I came to the university, and I've been actively pushing it for like 2 years now, not only as a member of the student council, but also before I was a student representative as well. I've been pushing to get them installed, and now finally one entrance of one building of one faculty has the guiding lines, which is, I think, not nearly enough, but it's at least a start. And I hope that they use this start to build, to continue building on it, and to really start expanding the project until hopefully every building, every faculty has guiding lines, has working elevators that speak out which floor they stop on. I've also been working on getting student sports accessible. So to give a bit of context, not every, but a lot of the universities in the Netherlands have sports centers where students can exercise. They have, everything you can imagine, from running, swimming, fighting sports, rowing, literally anything. And then you have the student gyms, so the gyms of the university, but you also have student sports associations. And they are basically associations where students can get together and do sports together, which is nice, because then you can exercise, be healthy, but also be with people your own age. However, for a very long time now, most of the student sports associations haven't really been accessible, because it hasn't really occurred to people that, students with a disability might want to exercise. Surprise. And this year, I've been working with Student Sports Amsterdam to get started on making student sports associations accessible. And again, really small starts, like they've started to do workshops for the boards of these associations to create some awareness, and some associations have started projects to think about how they are going to make their sports accessible. But it's only some associations, and it's not a requirement. So only those people with passion about it, or like at least some level of interest, have started. And honestly, it should be the case that every student sports association at least tries to make itself accessible and then thinks about each individual case, how they can make it work. Sadly, we're not there yet, but at least there's a start. So I've been working on that. I also wanted to work on making student associations and study associations in general more accessible, but sadly, I'm only one person and a year really flies by. So I haven't been able to get started on that. And problem is also that there's so many groups, so many people you can get involved with, that how much you can get done really also depends on a lot of other people. So it's not only you that needs to put in the effort, you are dependent on other people also wanting to put in the effort and being enthusiastic, and sadly that's not the case everywhere. So I haven't been able to really make a lot of headway there, but it is one of my goals, and I am passing it on to the next TSR, to my successors. So hopefully they can make some headway there. And then what I'm also trying to push this year and also giving on to my successors is student housing, because a lot of student housing isn't accessible, and those houses that are accessible, well, students with a disability don't have priority on them, which means that, for example, if you have a wheelchair accessible building, students with a wheelchair don't have priority over the student housing as compared to other students, which means that this low amount of accessible housing that there is, people with a disability that need it the most aren't given priority, which means that you're basically, you have no chance to get it. And I'm trying to create more awareness for this issue and pushing that as well. And then, of course, there's the attitude thing I mentioned. That's something it sounds so basic, right? Respect people's fundamental human rights. But for a lot of people, that somehow still seems to be complicated. That's what I've been trying to push. And then also something I've been trying to push is centralizing accessibility facilities, because right now each faculty does, different things, which means that they are doing some things right, but other things wrong. And another faculty might be doing right what the other faculty is doing wrong, but is getting other things, wrong. And this is a very complicated tangle where basically every program is their own island, and they really don't interact with each other. So nobody is exchanging best practices, and it's just a mess. So I've been trying to push for a more centralized policy where people just have the right to accessible education. And it's more on a university level, at least the funding and the organizing help is more on a central university level, because right now the way it works is if a program has more money, they can facilitate more, and the programs with less money can't facilitate as much, which basically means that you need to study the programs with a lot of money because they can make accessibility requirements in theory. They can make it accessible in theory. Whether they do it in practice is question number 2, but at least they have more means to do it. And that's, elitism, and I hate elitism. So I've been trying to do something about that. And a bunch of other things. I think I've already been speaking about it for 5 minutes or something. So, but those are some of the headlines.
Yeah. And I think another example around the centralization is the fact, the funny example that you gave, that there is guiding lines, but in one building out of all the buildings available, where I feel including guiding lines shouldn't be a big dent in the budget, right? So why isn't it that all the buildings get guiding lines?
Yeah, exactly. And they can somehow find funding for a fancy dinner of their 392 anniversary or something, but they can't find funding to put guiding lines in the buildings. I'm come on, guys.
Yeah.
Put some passion into it. This is a bit sad, if I'm going to be completely honest. This is just, it takes forever. Just start doing it. And if the guiding lines aren't laid correctly or there needs to be changes, then make the changes. It's not that complicated.
Yeah, exactly. I hear you.
But yeah, as I said, theory and practice for institutions are two completely different.
So you were telling me about all of your projects. Some of them were successful. Some are still in the process of being successful, and it's a long road. But I wanted to get an insight from you in regards to, in your opinion, what is, at what stage is someone convinced with actually making the change and making things happen and making either the university more accessible or the sports center you mentioned accessible? I'm asking this because, for example, we hosted like a panel around, how to make the workplace more accessible. And we hosted it in our event called Inclusive Innovations. And one argument that kept coming back, for example, in the case of workplace or making products more accessible, was that when people realize, and that's literally maybe more relevant in that context, when people realize the market value that people who are blind or have low vision, or maybe the bigger one, like people with disabilities have. So basically, when people realize, that this section is important, and then if you make your products better, you will make more money, basically, because then that audience is happy. So it was basically motivated by money. So when these big companies finally realized, like, okay, maybe we should add accessible QR codes, that way, we cover this portion of people and they are happy. So in the case of the university and all the places you've advocated at, what is it that makes people finally be convinced? Is it the number of students, or is it simply your persistence because you're great at doing that? Or what do you think is it for them that finally, or is it just basically like the understanding of the importance of inclusivity and, like basic human rights? So yeah, in your case, with your one-to-one conversations with people or in meetings, what makes them finally convinced to take the step?
I think it's, well, of course, persistence plays a role, and numbers, everything that you mentioned plays some kind of role. But I think in the end, what plays the biggest role is personal stories. So if you can really show what kind of impact it has on your life that their product or their facility is inaccessible, if you can really show people and speak to them also from your life's experience, from your emotions, what it does to you that you cannot access their facility or their product, how that negatively affects your life, it really hits home. And that can be a good starting point, at least for people to start investigating what they can do or what the problem is, or how many people are actually using their product or their facility, because those are all important things, but they are not the main, like they are all important for people to really take action. But in the end, for people to take action, they first need to be aware of the fact that action needs to be taken, or that action might need to be taken. And a way to make people aware of that is to really basically speak to them from a personal perspective. Like, what does this do to you? Like, how do you experience the fact that their product is not working? And what does it do to you? What does it do to the people you know, to the people in your surroundings? And also, if you make it clear that sometimes the solution can be very simple, so that make it clear that with very simple steps, they can make a lot of hardship for people disappear. I think that's the key to really get people moving. But it's only people who are, I think, willing to be convinced, because you also have some people who are just like not interested. Like you can tell them whatever you want, but they are just like set in their ways. So those people are very hard to impossible to convince, aside from maybe legislation, because then they really have no choice in the matter. But with people who are at least able to be convinced or are listening to what's being said to them, that's, I think, the quickest way to get things done. Like, really speak to people's emotion, like really explain to them what you are feeling, what your emotions are, what the consequences are for them not taking action. And I think that can really hit home.
Yeah, and is there a story that you usually share that usually like acts as a wake-up call for people?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are quite a few. Like the revolving doors is one of them that I get stuck in them all the time. That it hits me. I literally made a video for Folia, which is the news magazine kind of the university, of me walking into a revolving door and getting hit by it. I literally got it on. I got them to film me doing it, and that really, like, that makes people really aware because it's literally video evidence. But also, I think the story I just said about the dean of PPLE, who just said, yeah, people aren't welcome with disability. Like, if they have trouble coming to campus, like, they're not welcome on my program or some such. That really also hits people. And also, well, just stories like that, like people, like things that you've experienced that really have a negative impact on your life or on your experiences or like the group at large. Those are the type of things you need to remember and you need to use, because you have these negative experiences, and while it really sucks that you have them, like nobody's happy being excluded or like feeling like they don't belong, use those stories as fuel to create change. So remember them and make sure that those experiences don't go to waste.
So what's your summer like this season, and are you planning to do any traveling? You mentioned you like to travel.
Yeah, I did a lot of traveling this year actually. I went in February. I went to Münster in Germany. In April, I went to Tirana, Albania, and in the beginning of May, I went to Cairo, to Egypt. In June, I went to Morocco, and actually at the end of this month, I'm going to Riga. And in August, I am, and that's actually quite cool. I'm going to Geneva with a delegation of organizations that fight for the rights of people with disability in the Netherlands. And our delegation is going to talk to the UN, because the Netherlands is getting reviewed on how well they're implementing the Convention on the Rights of Peoples with Disabilities, and we can speak to the committee, to the UN committee that's in charge of reviewing how well countries are doing, and speak to them about our experiences. So it's really cool that I got that opportunity to go to Geneva and talk to the committee and to other people there. I think it's a really nice experience. And other than that, well, I'm working on my thesis, and I have until the end of August to finish that. And I'm also going to have to help with working in the new student council, because they're going to get started from September onwards. And in August, there's a lot of transfer things happening, so I have to transfer my files and maybe answer some questions and, well, basically helping the new people.
Yeah. And what else do you do in your free time?
I like to read a lot. I read fantasy and sci-fi, audiobooks. I also, of course, love to travel, exercising, listening to music. Well, a lot of things really. It really depends on my mood and on the season as well. But I think those are the main. Oh yeah, and I watch a lot of anime. Anime is very descriptive, so it explains a lot, also in audio, in sound. It's not just visuals. If you compare it to normal movies or normal series with acting, they tend to focus a lot on the visuals. But anime, while visuals are important, it focuses a lot more on the sound, like the soundtracks, the music, the way people speak, sound effects. They're way more expressive in that sense. So, for example, if you hear fire style fireball, it's not hard to imagine what's happening. Like it's quite obvious. Whereas maybe in a movie they would just shoot out a fireball without shouting out the technique name. And I think that in nature, it's most of the time more accessible, anime, when you compare it to other media. And of course, it also depends on the genre.
So far, have you do you use any assistive technology, or what are the aids as well that you use every day?
So I have a guiding stick, of course, that I use on a daily basis. I have my phone with VoiceOver. I have my laptop with JAWS and NVDA installed. And I use AI description of pictures quite a lot. That's actually very useful, especially for letters or other like paper work that you have to somehow figure out. It's quite nice to just be able to take a picture and then let it do whatever.
And after you graduate, do you want to work in a job that is related to advocacy or accessibility?
Probably. I mean, nobody knows what the future holds, certainly not me. And a lot of, the thing with advocacy is also connections matter a lot. Who you know, where you know them. It matters a lot on if you can get politically active, where you can get politically active, and what you can accomplish. So a lot of it isn't really up to my individual effort alone. So I will try and make the most of it. And in the end, if it doesn't work out, at least I will have done my best, and maybe I will do something else. But at least my goal for now is to try and become politically active and to fight for this on a more, on a bigger scale. And we'll see how that pans out, how that works out. I cannot really say anything for sure yet. And it's also really dependent on how I like it or how I feel about it, because sometimes I really feel like national politics is a shit show. It's like people are like, sometimes I feel like it's an elementary school playground. People are just so childish and fighting over nothing, attacking each other personally, being racist, being ableist, whatever. Everything happens there, and it's not really constructive all the time, or it doesn't really go about what needs to happen, what needs to change, how you can make people's life easier. And instead it's about the one-liners, about who can show the other person up.
Yeah.
You know, be the more, I don't know, be the more fancy speaker. And I don't know if I want to be in that environment, if I can be in that environment.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I cannot, I mean, I want to say I will, and that I will make it happen, and that's going to happen. But I don't know. I haven't done it yet. So I cannot really, I know that a lot of people have tried and it didn't work out for them, and other people have tried and it did work out for them. And I guess I will have to find out how well it fits how well I can deal with it, because I already know I don't like it. But it's just that I don't like it, or I cannot deal with it, only time can really tell that.
Yeah. And if we go back a bit more to, AI and tech, is there something on your wish list, or if you were to like kind of envision your ideal wearable, no pun intended, like what is you think a solution that you think you would benefit from, that's obviously like different from your phone, or something that you don't need your hands to use, etc.
Yeah, as I said, if you can have like glasses or anything that you can wear that can interpret the world around you for you, and that can tell you or give you cues when you have to cross a road, when you can cross safely, give you exact directions. So not like Google Maps that tells you to go right 20 or 30 meters before you actually have to go right and you get lost, but actual like clear-cut, exact directions. That would really, for me, be revolutionary, because it would mean that I can basically be completely independent on where I travel and how I go. And that would, for me, be a big change, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe one last thing before we wrap it up is, what attitudes have you come across, when you ask people for help, but also how should people offer help? Like, what are the best practices on both ends?
I've experienced a whole spectrum. I mean, there have been people who have, of course, said right away, of course, I'm more than willing to help. And there are people who hesitated a bit and then said, yeah, I can help. and there's people who just said, I'm sorry, I can't help now because I have to rush somewhere. And there's people who just say no. And then you're like, okay. There's a whole spectrum. And there's also just people who walk past without saying anything. I'm just assuming those people are wearing headphones. I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're not rude. But there's a whole spectrum of people and how they react to situations, I would say, when you ask for help anyway. And as for people that want to offer help, I would just say ask, like, can I help? Or can I assist with anything? Can I help with anything? Or have you already figured it out? And then people can say, yeah, no thanks, I'm okay. Or they can say, yes, please, could you maybe help me with this or that? And I think that's the best thing to do. Of course, there's also people who are not going to be happy with being offered help at all. But in the end, I think that's also a bit of a give and take process, because you have to be patient to people to some extent. They cannot smell how much help you do or don't need. And I think it's fine if people offer help. Like, that's fine. What you shouldn't do is just grab someone. Like, I've had people that just grab me and suddenly start pulling me to some direction. I'm like, oh, wait. You're going in the wrong direction. And then I have to guide them to the place I actually have to go. Because that also happens sometimes, where you know where you want to go, but someone just starts helping without asking first. And I mean, they have the best intentions, but don't do it. Just offer. And I mean, in terms of reactions, I've had a lot of different things. I've also had people that are randomly wanted to start praying for me or whatever when I really don't need it. Or there's a lot of things people do that sometimes you're like, oh, I don't need this. I don't want this. And then I think the best rule is just to ask. I can tell the story a little bit. I was just in the metro, and then a lady came up to me and she was like, do you know that God loves you? And I was like, well, I guess so. Thanks. Yes. And then she asked, can I pray for you? And I kind of felt like really uncomfortable, and I didn't really know what to say or do. So I just said, yeah, I guess, do what you want. And then she just started praying out loud and being like, yeah, in the name of Jesus, the blindness shall wake for you. And in the name of Jesus, the blindness shall go, blah, blah, blah. And I think she's really sweet, and she really did it with the best of intentions. But it's really awkward if someone starts praying for you right in the middle of the metro, loudly. And then her daughter was right next to her, and she was like, amen, amen. I was just standing there, and I really didn't know what to do with myself. If you want to pray for someone, just do it quietly. God will hear your prayers. You don't have to shout them out loud in the public transportation.
Yeah, it's like there's no reason to make a scene out of it as well.
There's no reason to make a public spectacle.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Ihab, for your time today.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
It's been great getting to know you more and really see, the work and also your ambitions to make, university more accessible, and also the places beyond university. So it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for tuning in to the Envision podcast. Please follow us on all social media using the username @Let'sEnvision on all social media. Thank you, everyone, and see you on the next episodes.